Hello, my name's Aviva, and today I wanted to share with you some books that I would love to reread this year. So I made a stack of about 20 books that I would really love to do a reread of. Last year, I only reread 3 series and 1 standalone, and honestly, I feel like that was not a lot. I always have a hard time picking up a book that I've read already because I always have such a large TBR that's waiting for me, and I'm always like, well, I already know that story, so shouldn't I just read something that I don't know yet? But this year, I kind of do want to prioritize rereading some of my favorite books. So today I thought I'd share them with you so that hopefully I have something to look back on when I want to push myself to do a reread. First up, I have Throne of Glass, which I 100% will be doing a reread of. I've already reread this series twice. My last time rereading it was March of 2021. So I'm very close to ready for a reread. I have been kind of craving this series lately, and I'm just trying to push it off a little bit more because it's going to take me a while to read this, and I'm not so down for such a long break right now of like stopping to read new books. So I know that I have to give this series at least 2 weeks to get through, and therefore that is what is holding me off right now. But I 100% know that sometime in the year of 2022, this series will be getting a reread. Also, while we're on the topic, I just wanted to point out that this is my favorite fantasy series of all time. If I could only choose one series to read for the rest of my life, without a doubt, I would choose Throne of Glass. But a very close second is actually A Court of Thorns and Roses. So I will 100% be doing a reread of this series in 2022 as well, mostly because I know that once I pick up either ACOTAR or Throne of Glass, I'm gonna get a book hangover, and the only thing that can kind of help me is one or the other. So whichever one I decide to pick up first, I'm gonna end up having to read the other one right after that, and that is another reason why I'm kind of pushing this off for as long as I can, because I just know that once I read one, I'm gonna crave the other. So I just wanted to point out that I love this series to death, but I really just love A Court of Mist and Fury, which is the second book in the series. I think that the whole series is okay, but I definitely have books that I don't like as much in the series, and when I do think of ACOTAR, I'm really thinking of A Court of Mist and Fury. So I'm very excited to do a reread of this series, but I'm mostly excited just to be able to reread A Court of Mist and Fury. I'm also hoping to do a reread of From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. So the 4th book in this series is coming out in March, and I already have it pre-ordered. And honestly, after reading A Shadow in the Ember, which was the new release that came out in October, I kind of got really jumbled in my head of the world of this. Like, it kind of really confused me, and I think that before I pick up the next book in the series, I should really do a reread of the first 3 so that it's just all fresh in my mind and I go in with like a clear head. And honestly, I kind of have a bad taste in my mouth of this series because I really wasn't a fan of A Shadow in the Ember. If you want to know why, I'll make sure that my reading vlog, spoiler free, is linked in the description below. But basically, I really didn't like that one, but I remember absolutely loving this series. So I really feel like it's important for me to do a reread of this before I pick up the new release in March. So hopefully I will get to this one pretty soon. I also think it would be really fun to do a reread of A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. So I haven't read this series in about 2 years now. It was one of the first series that I picked up when I got myself back into reading as an adult, and I remember loving it. It was one of the first books that kind of pushed me to being like, okay, I really want to get into reading again. So I think it would be really fun to do a reread of this to just see like if it lives up to my remembrance of it. Like, I remember loving it without a doubt, and I don't know, I've heard a lot of mixed things about it after I read it, and now I'm kind of curious to see how I look at it through the eyes of someone who has now read like hundreds of books, you know? I'd also really like to do a reread of 10 Rules for Faking It by Sophie Sullivan. So I read this for the first time at the beginning of January of 2021, and I remember loving it at the time. It's like a dual POV, and the girl has like anxiety, and I love seeing anxiety rep in books. And it was like, I don't know, it was this whole thing between like a boss and like, you know, a worker, and like there was like a bachelorette vibe going on. I just remember like loving this from beginning to end. The thing is that I don't see anybody talk about this book, and I have a weird feeling that I would feel differently about it like now than I did at the time that I read it, because I have so many more romances like under my belt, and I feel like I'm so much pickier these days. And I'm really curious to see if this book still lives up to how good I remember it being. I also want to do a reread of The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armez, and my choice for this is funny because I actually always wanted to do a reread of The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, and then I watched the movie, and honestly it kind of ruined the book for me. Not that it ruined it fully, like I still love the book for what it is, but for some reason I'm not as pulled to do a reread of it as I am this book, which is extremely similar. It's also a workplace environment, enemies to lovers, but it's kind of a little bit better because there's also like fake dating and they go to like this wedding, and there's like so much more to this book. I feel like this book is The Hating Game kind of on crack. So I feel like even though I wanted to do a reread of The Hating Game up until I watched the movie, I feel like this is a good runner-up because I remember thoroughly enjoying this book, and I feel like if at one point it hits me that I want to do a reread of something along those lines, then this is a really good choice for that. Next, I have the Ravenhood series by Kate Stewart. So I'm holding up book 1, it's Flock. Second book is Exodus. Third book is The Finish Line. And I 100% am going to make sure that I do a reread of this series before 2022 is over. I have 12 months to get this done, and I will do it. The only thing holding me back is that I'm not ready for the heartache that I know it's going to give me, because I'm still not over the first time that I read it. But this was one of my favorite series from 2021. And I have never read anything like this series, and I just know that it would be a shame if I don't prioritize a reread of this in 2022. I also very much want to do a reread of 3 books from the Sinner of Saints series. So there's actually 4 books in this series. The second book is Ruckus, and I don't plan to reread that one because it was my least favorite from this companion series, but I love this series so much that I'm willing to just skip book 2 because I already know what happens. I don't really need to do a reread of it so that I can enjoy, the other 3. So book 1's a bully romance. Book 3 is a age gap romance, forbidden sort of stuff. And then book 4 is kind of really hard to explain. There's a lot of like trauma in this. Like I would definitely look up the trigger warnings before you pick this series up. But like the girl, she went through a very traumatic experience. And then this guy basically like kind of helps her, becomes her friend, but is also being paid by her father to like, befriend her and get her out of her funk and like come back to life sort of thing. But she doesn't know that, and it's like a whole thing. Then obviously they fall for each other, so whatever. Anyway, I absolutely love these 3 books, and I very much want to do a reread of them. I've actually been like itching to pick them up like for the past like 2 months or so, but I keep pushing it off because I read these for the first time only in like August or something, and I just feel like I should give it a little bit more time before I pick these up again. I'd also love to reread The Sweetest Oblivion by Danielle Laurie at some point this year. This is the first book in the Maid series. I've already read all 3 books, and while I thoroughly enjoy the whole series, I feel like I can just pick up book 1 and do a reread of this one and then see how I feel, and I might pick up book 3 as well. I definitely won't be doing a reread of book 2 because it was my least favorite from the series, but this one is an arranged marriage mafia romance, and I absolutely loved it. It was one of the best mafia romances I have read yet. I haven't read a lot, but by far this one is still my favorite. I mean, I have a couple favorites, but for an arranged marriage, this one is definitely my favorite. And I don't know, I just feel like if the mood strikes for an arranged marriage mafia romance and I don't have one on my TBR, then hopefully I'll turn to this one and do a reread. At some point in this year, I would also like to reread The Deal and then The Risk, which is the first book in the Off-Campus series and then the second book in the Briar U series. So I read all 8 books this past year, and I wasn't a huge fan of all of them, but by far these 2 were my favorites. And because they're companion books, I definitely can just pick up one and enjoy it for what it is. So at some point in this year, I would love to reread these 2. And the last book that I'm going to share with you that hopefully, well, this one is not hopefully, this one is a 100% will reread in 2022, is the Addicted Callaway series by Krista and Becca Ritchie. So I read all 10 books throughout, the end of November, beginning of December, which means that I literally just finished this series and I'm already ready to do a reread. But I have a feeling that it would be smart of me to push this off for a while. So in my head, I'm thinking about doing a reread of this sometime in November and possibly vlogging it again, because I did vlog my first experience of this, and then every Friday in December a new vlog came out. So I'm thinking that maybe in November I'll do this again and then vlog it again. For Bookmas next year, I'll do like the same sort of vibe, except it will be a reread instead of like my first time, and hopefully it will be more interesting to watch. So anyway, that's kind of like my plans for this series, but honestly, who knows? It might hit me earlier to do a reread. Maybe I won't vlog it, like who the hell knows? But basically, I 100% will be doing a reread of this because this made my #1 spot of 2021, but it also is now my #1 favorite romance series of all time. And honestly, I don't think it's ever going to leave that spot because nothing can compare to this series. So this is the last one that I'm planning to do a reread of in 2022. Honestly, I don't know if I'm going to end up getting to all of the books that I mentioned, but this is kind of like, what I would like to do. We'll see if it actually happens. Like I said, my TBR is always too long, so I kind of have a hard time picking up a book I've already read, but that's the reason for owning a library, because I have the option to pick it up if I want to. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, let me know what books you are hoping to do a reread of in 2022, or do you not do rereads? Some people are not into it. So whatever, leave me a comment down below. I am curious to hear your thoughts. But anyway, if you enjoyed watching this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not currently subscribed to my channel, please hit that subscribe button. And anyway, thank you so much for watching and clicking on my video. And until next time, enjoy reading.